I'm very excited to introduce Amara Ifeji. She's a 19-year-old freshman at Northeastern University and the Grassroots Development Coordinator with the Maine Environmental Education Association. So welcome, Amara. And I am now going to pull up your slides and do my best. So let's see. Hang on just one second. Okay, here we go. And Jake and Amara, can you see my screen? Okay, awesome. So I'm going to hit present. And Amara, just give me some signal when you want me to switch slides.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for everyone who's joining on this call. And thank you, Lander and Jake, for the opportunity to really just share about my lived experiences in the environmental sector and how I'm just so grateful that at 19 years old, I found really the place that I know that I'm going to continue working in. So yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to do so. And so I think with any good story, it's nice to always start at the beginning. So we're going to do a little flashback. And so this is me and my cousins. Here we are in our home in Maryland outside. And I am the one on the far right. I totally commend myself for my fashion choices when I think I was like 7 or 8 back then. And I didn't have a picture of just myself because my parents were way too busy actually like raising me as a kid to like instead of like taking pictures and stuff. But yeah, I think this is a good picture because it shows me, of course, outside. And as a kid, I remember that I just like really loved playing outside, and I had a really deep interest and passion for the environment starting off really young. I would spend hours, literal hours, playing outside, especially in the dirt. I was fascinated by the dirt, and picking up worms. And I was totally a rock collector. I think I had 3 pet rocks when I was small. I remember this one time, it was at church actually, and we had gone outside to do some kind of game, but I never went back inside. So the entire church like stopped the service and they were like, we're missing a child. I was just having myself a grand old time. I was, once again, playing with the worms. I was having a great time. And I remember my mother was just like, you can't do that again. She was especially mad because I had just got this new dress and I had completely soiled it in dirt and stuff. But I think that just speaks to the passion and curiosity that I had for the environment at such a young age. But despite this passion for the environment, I really had a lack of environmental experiences when I was younger. Looking back on like my K through 12 experience, I had no formal environmental education that was based in classroom setting. Of course, there was recess, but I don't really include recess in actually engaging with the outdoors. And so because of this, all of my experiences in engaging with and learning about the outdoors were self-sought. And actually the most transformative experience for me was attending the Stormwater Management and Research Team Summer Institute my freshman year. Next. So the SMART Summer Institute, and so SMART is an acronym and it stands for the Stormwater Management and Research Team. Summer Institute was a convening of, I think it was maybe 50 or so high school students from across the state at the University of Maine, actually. So 15 minutes from where I am in Bangor right now. And so this training institute was really based around learning about water quality and water justice, and making sure that high school students knew the importance of stormwater. And so I would describe stormwater as the process by which rain or snow washing over impervious surfaces such as parking lots and things, picking up pollutants and then depositing them into bodies of water. And these pollutants obviously are pretty detrimental to bodies of water as it is. So over the course of the week and a half that we were at the university, we looked at the effects of stormwater pollution on the Penobscot watershed that was local to the University of Maine site. And of course, I so appreciated connecting with students across the state or across the country, actually. I so appreciated the wonderful food that we had because I'm a big foodie. But I think that the thing that I most appreciate about that experience in particular was it really was the pivotal experience that fostered my deep passion and connection to the environment and really solidified it from what I had experienced as a kid. And so next. And so it was really with that experience that I began to further explore my passion for the environment. So it was over the summer of my freshman year that I attended the SMART Institute. And then the following summer of my sophomore year, there was National Science Foundation funding to hold it again. So for 2 summers, I attended that. In between the summers and in the school year, I myself went sampling. And so one of my friends, you can see us in these 2 pictures. We are in the Conduit stream, which is the stream that is local to the city of Bangor, and it also connects to the Penobscot watershed. And so each week from I think maybe April to we were pushing it and definitely sampled well into January, which was very chilly. But it was just the love and passion that we had for what we did that really prompted us, despite some pretty cold weather, to go out and to make sure that the Conduit stream was not being impaired because of stormwater pollution. And so with my passion and my newfound love for water justice and water quality, around that time of my freshman year and sophomore year was when the Flint, Michigan water crisis was very much so being televised in the news. And so I saw it as a great disservice to the people in Flint that their source of drinking water was contaminated. They did not have a source of drinking water. They had, I remember it saying that even to just do common everyday household activities, one would have to buy copious amounts of gallons and gallons of water. And so I saw that, and with my knowledge that I had from the 2 previous institutes that I attended, I did a research project that was really catered towards heavy metal remediation. And so what I did was at 17 years, I still was playing in the dirt as I was, but this time my playing in the dirt was to grow plants and fungi, mycorrhizal fungi in particular. And so this mutualism between the plants and the fungi actually made it so that they were able to remove both lead and copper pollutants from a simulated stormwater events that I set up. And so I really fell in love with research as well because of my passion for the environment. And so I coined myself very much so a citizen scientist. Going out into the field, doing research really was what I loved and what I spent a good portion of my high school career doing. I remembered that over winter break, I was I I went into the school and it was like 8 a.m. I would show up and then I would leave at like 10. And I made best friends with all of the janitors because they had to let me into the school and they had to make sure that the alarm didn't go off when I left the school so late at night. But yeah, it was just my passion and I really enjoyed doing it. And it now comes to the summer of my junior year. And so the summer of my junior year, there was actually no National Science Foundation funding. to run the Stormwater Management and Research Team Summer Institute. And so because of this, the National Institute was not going to be taking place at the University of Maine as it had the 2 previous summers. And so I saw that as a really big disservice to many students, because it was really at that institute that I solidified my passion for the environment. It was a pivotal experience. And so I really saw it as, in not having the institute, that students were being robbed of that experience. And at this time, I was also just beginning to become plugged in the organization that I work for now, the Maine Environmental Education Association. So I attended the Changemakers gathering around that time that I was finding out that the Institute was no longer going to be taking place. And I saw it as a bigger disservice after attending this gathering, because it was after attending the Changemakers gathering that I saw that there was a link between the connection that I had to the environment, my lack of a lot of environmental experiences, environmental learning opportunities, and my identity. Those being, I'm female identifying, that I am my socioeconomic status, as well as my race. And so because of that, that really was what fueled me. The learning that I had at the Changemakers gathering connected with the learning that I had at the Summer Institute, to say that it's even a greater disservice for BIPOC individuals, for BIPOC students, for female identifying students, and those who are socioeconomically underserved, not to have this experience that I did. And because of that, it really played a huge role in my curating or trying to simulate a similar yet equally as transformative experience at my local high school for BIPOC students, female identifying students, and those from socioeconomically underserved Black backgrounds. Next. So kind of elaborating on the points that I made about how my experiences, or rather lack of experience with environmental learning and having those learning opportunities, was due to the fact of, my identity. To elaborate on that, I am a BIPOC individual. And so in that, there is a lot of fear that I know my mother, as well as many BIPOC parents, have around their children engaging with the outdoors. The outdoors, to my mother, was a scary place, especially after dark, after hours, and having me in that setting, she was very much so not comfortable with. And so because of that, that was one barrier to access to the outdoors. Another was my gender. It's a single story that playing outside and getting dirty, using one's hands, is a male thing. And I definitely also felt that way growing up. So, I would be deep in the dirt, I would be making friends with worms and things like that. And it wasn't seen as quote unquote ladylike. And so because of that, that was another barrier that I had to access to a connection to place with the outdoors. Last, my socioeconomic status, I would say, was the biggest factor in my barrier to access to the outdoors. I grew up, I am an immigrant. I grew up in an immigrant household, and my mother, as she was raising my sister and I, was trying to put herself through school. And so because of this, the trade-off of her higher education, there were some things that we frankly could not afford. In Maine, there's snow on the ground for at least 8 months out of the year. So a lot of engaging with the outdoors is done in the wintertime, but snow pants and snowshoes and things like that were extremely expensive. And so because of that, that was another barrier, being able to afford those things. was a barrier to me further connecting with the outdoors. But these things really should not have prevented me, or frankly, any other youth, from engaging with the outdoors, because everyone has a right to outdoor learning opportunities. And above all, a connection to the environment. And I really wanted to be a part of creating an avenue for these connections. And so this is why I sort of, I would say, mirrored the institute that I attended 2 summers prior at my high school, Bangor High School. So over the course of 6 months, I did some pretty intensive work in organizing this institute for local high school students. I secured funding through the Onion Foundation. It was the first grant that I wrote. I co-wrote with one of the advisors for the SMART team. And I remember I had to do like many phone calls and things like that to set up, transportation to the field sites. We did a tour of the facility of the wastewater treatment center, so securing that and things like that. But all in all, the work that I did to put that together was most definitely worth it. I say it frankly was the single most rewarding experience of my life so far, to see these students engage with the outdoors. Some of these students, they had expressed to me that they never even wanted to take another science class, that it was not for them, that they totally felt as though the environment and science in general was not a place that they could even be involved in because of past experiences. But then at the end of the week, the institute, these same students were telling me how they were so excited to further engage with the SMART team throughout the school year, and how they were eager to take classes, science classes, STEM classes, the following school year as well, which just, to say it made my heart happy is a really big understatement. It was so rewarding to see these students fostering their connection to the environment. And over the course of the school year, the students actually still engaged with the SMART team. So the SMART team that year, which was my senior year, had about 20 or so members. And so each week we continued to sample, again, well into January in the cold months. And we gathered data for the Penobscot watershed. And actually at the end of the year, we had some conferences and other speaking opportunities in which we were able to relay the information that we gathered, that the Penobscot watershed was in fact not being impaired by stormwater pollution. And similarly, at the end of the school year, each of the students performed their own water quality research projects. And another very rewarding and fulfilling experience was that all of the students who submitted projects to the Maine State Science Fair actually ended up securing awards, every single one of them, for the work that they did over the course of the school year. And so it was really engaging with these students that made me realize that I wanted to continue doing the work of advancing equitable access to the outdoors. Next. And this kind of ties into the work that I'm currently doing. So as stated earlier, I'm the Grassroots Development Coordinator with the Maine Environmental Education Association. And I'm so grateful to work at the organization that I do, because that experience of attending the Changemakers gathering that MIA hosts each year was the thing that I would say transformed me from a person who saw environmental access and the climate crisis as a scientific based and scientific issue. But then after attending the MIA gathering, I no longer saw it in that way. Of course, it is science-based, but the way I look at it now is that the issue of environmental access, environmental exploitation, and climate change, they are social issues in that it is really, one has to look at it in terms of, I guess, convincing individuals of, you know, climate change and things of that sort, that it's really hard for one to look at a graph of, CO2 trends over time, for example, and just get it. I've met one person who has done that. But when one frames it as, okay, the climate crisis and environmental exploitation, these are issues that is impacting people's livelihood. And specifically, it is impacting those from marginalized backgrounds, BIPOC individuals, and those from socioeconomically underserved backgrounds. That's really what's going to prompt individuals to take action around these issues. And so I first engaged with MIA at 16, and now at 19, I'm so grateful for the work that I do with such an amazing team. Some of this work includes a mini grant that we launched, I think back in October, for National Teacher Day. And so for this mini grant, we gave funding to, we calculated was 1/7 of all public schools in Maine to be able to carry out environmental learning initiatives at their schools for their students. MIA is part of this consortium, the Nature-Based Education Consortium. And as part of the Nature-Based Education Consortium, I'm on a couple different task forces, and these task forces work on different areas of the environmental movement, really to advance their goal of equitable access to outdoor learning for all K through 12 youth in Maine. And so as part of the Nature-Based Education Consortium Climate Change Education Task Force, which is a mouthful to say, we submitted a set of recommendations to the Maine Climate Council around climate change education and the right Maine students have to this education. And actually, the recommendations that we submitted actually made it into the final recommendations of the Maine Climate Council, which is extremely rewarding in itself because that task force is youth-led. So it is youth really who are fueling their education, the things that they learn about, the things that they're interested in. I'm also part of the Nature-Based Education Consortium's Municipal Advocacy Task Force, which is really focused on equipping schools and administrators, educators with the resources they need to provide outdoor learning opportunities to their students. And like I said, I am just so grateful that at 19 years old, I have found my passion. I have found the thing that I want to continue advocating for. It is so important that all Maine youth have equitable access to the outdoors and they're able to foster a connection with it, because in loving the world around them and engaging with the world around them, they are not going to let it be exploited as it is now. One is not going to stand by and watch as the thing that they love, the thing that they grew up with, grew up exploring, is being ripped apart. So it is really in fostering that connection to place with the environment that one is really building up climate and environmental activists. So that is why I think it is so important that all Maine youth have a right, to equitable outdoor learning opportunities. That concludes my presentation. And at this time, I think we're going to open it up for a Q&A.
Thank you, Amara. That was really inspiring, and I'm so grateful to hear all of your stories. You're doing amazing work. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Laura. We've got a couple of questions for you. We've got some praise and thanks for you. And let's see. We've got a lot of people joining in from different land trusts around. And let's see, Lander, is anybody raising their hand?
I will check.
That'd be a great place to start.
I think somebody, yes. It looks like Samantha Wolf is raising their hand. So I am going to allow you to talk if that was an intentional hand. Sometimes it's accidental.
It was on purpose. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Amara. That was a really lovely background and just like terrific work that you're doing. And I'm so glad you're a part of this. I just want to know what Elantris can do. We're trying to, reorganize our community programming with COVID, in the landscape here. And one of my biggest questions, I guess, is how can I present some community programming that feels safe to BIPOC? Because I know, like you said, a lot of immigrant families feel a bit nervous, especially going into the woods in Maine, especially, in the evening. And I really want my trails to be something that anyone can feel safe on. Do you have any suggestions? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your question, Samantha. I really appreciate that question because although I would describe myself as like a climate justice activist, conservation is a field that I'm very much so interested in. And at MIA, we collaborate on a conservation project with the Southern Maine Conservation Collaborative. And so that is in fact the exact thing that we are working on, ensuring that BIPOC individuals feel safe, in these spaces. There are a lot of stories that are not the best stories of BIPOC individuals engaging with the outdoors, and they're just not having the best experiences. But I think that there are several ways to ensure that BIPOC individuals do have just amazing formative experiences with the outdoors. So I think first is my organization is really a big fan and advocate for storytelling. I think that it's so important that I would say it's really important for individuals to hear of stories. And I think it's really important to highlight the good stories. So, if one knows a BIPOC individual who had a very wonderful formative experience in the outdoors, tell that story. It's really going to help other individuals who are maybe be apprehensive to engage in that space to see, hey, they went out into the outdoors, they engaged with the outdoors, they had a wonderful time. Maybe that could be the case for me as well. In terms of trails and things, one thing that I have found being part of an immigrant household is that trails themselves sometimes are not the most accessible, in that perhaps, well, I'll give an example. So I have some individuals in my household who are not fluent in English. And so if I was not on a trail with them, it would be extremely difficult for them to read maps because they're primarily in English. So I think it's one thing to have trails, maps, and things like that, even guides who speak different languages, graphics in different languages and things like that. It would make individuals feel all the more comfortable if they're actually able to engage with the trail itself in their native language, in a language that they're comfortable with and that they know, instead of just not being able to perhaps read a map and just going off and venturing, which feels very much so scary. So I would say those are the things that I see that would just really do a world of difference in making sure that BIPOC individuals feel comfortable in these spaces.
Thank you so much, Amara. That was great. So we have a question in the chat box. I'll read it off to you. One of the big challenges to school programs is transportation, particularly for after school programs. Do you have to deal with this? Wasn't sure if your programs were part of a regular school or after school.
Yes. So transportation is a huge, it was a huge barrier. So when I first engaged with the stormwater management and research team, I was a freshman. I could not drive, and this was an after-school program. So it was really hard for us to coordinate getting to sites and to actually go out to be able to sample because it was a really, I just so appreciate the advisors that we had for this club because they would take out 3 hours of their day once a week to just take us to these sites, which was just so amazing, and I so appreciate that. But as I grew older, my junior year, I got my license, and a lot of the other students I was working with, they also got their licenses as well. So it became, instead of a 3-hour affair that we had to do once a week, instead it was 30 minutes because we could each divide up and go to, we had many sites, we had like 8 sites. So we could each divide up and then meet back at the school to do, I guess like E. coli and turbidity and all of those other tests. But transportation is a really big, was a really big issue. And I would say that it really, I guess it really takes, and I wouldn't be able to have done anything without my advisors who were able to dedicate their time to my learning, to my experiences with the outdoors. But yeah, that very much so resonates with me about transportation being an issue.
Thanks, Amara. Well put. So feel free to ask your questions in the chat box. There's plenty of time left. And Lander, does anybody have a hand raised?
Let me check. No more hands yet, but feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to ask Amara a question directly.
I have a question for Amara while we wait. Amara, thank you so much for your sharing what you have already. And you spoke of the importance of, speaking of positive experiences with the outdoors. And is there any, I'm sure there are a few more positive experiences you've had that you haven't already mentioned that maybe would be worth sharing with us all who have tuned in.
Yeah, a lot of the really positive experiences that I have with the outdoors really are around my sampling and going out into the field. And so I remember there was a day that our school actually, I think it was like a windstorm or something like that, but school actually closed for the day. But in just loving what you do. I remember that even on our day off, the SMART team and I still went out sampling. And so we were out sampling for a pretty good part of the day. And I remember after we went to our local coffee shop and we were able to, warm ourselves up with some, coffee and other beverages and things like that. So I just remember that being an experience that really just made me extremely happy. And then when I moved to Maine, actually, I think, I was about 9 when I moved to Maine. I remember my mother wanting us to explore Maine, on her quest to become a true Mainer. So we went to Acadia National Park, and I think there was just we drove up Cadillac, and I just remember looking out and just seeing such a large expanse. It was extremely beautiful. I didn't really have anything like that. I grew up in the DC metropolitan area. So a lot of things that I saw were, big buildings and skyscrapers and things like that. So to be able to see such a beautiful sight was really an experience that for me was very transformative, very positive as well.
Thank you, Amara. We have some more questions in the chat box, so maybe Jake and I can bounce back and forth and read them out to you. So the next one that came through is, which additional languages would you choose for signage on trails?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, in a perfect world, I would say that signs would have every single language. Like one would scan their QR code and just be able to translate in the language that they need. But I think in terms of feasibility and things like that, probably like the official languages of the United Nations. I think it's Arabic, French, Spanish, and some others that I'm missing, but commonly spoken languages. But thinking about our state in particular, I think it's important that one takes a look at the populations in our state. So Maine has a very large Somali population in the Lewiston area. So I would say Somali as well as Arabic. And there are many Franco-Americans in our state as well. So French being a priority, but I think those would be the languages that I would prioritize. But in a perfect world, it would be all languages, I would say.
That's
Thanks,
great.
Amara. We had an inquiry about whether you've been, going to school remotely and if that's, proving to be attainable, and if you're involved in any research in the Boston citizen science groups.
So this semester last semester actually, because I'm on break now, but last semester I was remote, and with everything going on, it is very, very difficult, the world that we're in right now. But I still think that I had a very positive first semester of my college experience. Next semester, I am currently in the midst of packing and moving to Boston next Thursday, so a week from now. And I'm super excited to be on campus because I think that, just building up those formative college experiences is something that I'm really looking forward to. In terms of research, I actually have not been involved in any kind of research, and that was such a big part of my high school experience that I hope to have in my college experience as well. I guess as different topics that I've been looking into, I would really love to look more into a case study on environmental racism, which is a topic in the environmental movement that has really only, I guess, been talked about in the very few couple of years. But I would love to look at environmental racism, especially pertaining to water justice, so closely analyzing the Flint, Michigan water crisis as well.
Awesome, thanks. Another question, how are you doing? Are you okay if we keep giving you questions? Okay. So Carolyn says, we have translations of a book on a story walk, but have had difficulty letting immigrant populations know that they're there. Any suggestions? And what's the best way to reach out to BIPOC populations and make them feel welcome without being intrusive?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks so much. So I would say it's really powerful to be able to step into a space and for an individual not to be the only one in that space that, I would say it's nice to be able to step into a space and be able to identify with an individual in that space, if that makes sense. So I would say that perhaps it would be incredible to have a BIPOC individual in that space who is able to guide other individuals in the space and say, hey, look, we have these resources here, and this is something we offer and things like that. I know that when I was engaging in the outdoors, my first ever camping experience, actually, it was just all the more better that I had another BIPOC individual with me, because I was extremely apprehensive when I was going camping. But yes, I would say that having someone in that space that one can identify with, I think would make sure that it feels inclusive and they could also relay information that is available for other individuals. In terms of suggestions that I had about reaching out to BIPOC populations and it, feeling welcoming without being intrusive, I would just say that oftentimes more than not, as a BIPOC individual, I'm not even getting the reaching out to. So when I even get the reaching out to in a kind mannered way, I'm extremely excited. I don't think it's intrusive by any means, because oftentimes, more than not, BIPOC individuals don't even, get that connection in the first place. So I would say just any, kind of welcome, this is our land trust, or this is our organization, here's what we offer. We'd love for you to come and explore our trails and things. I think that would just be so, so wonderful. And I would not consider it intrusive at all.
Thanks, Amara. We had an inquiry about, if there's a place on the internet that's worth advertising trails, and maybe if there's a good place for postings for volunteers, specifically for BIPOC people who are interested in getting involved and maybe, building that connection with the trails and with nature.
Yeah. In terms of specific places on the internet, I don't know if I'm aware of any, but I would say that social media in general is a very, very powerful tool. I look back to this summer and the learning that I did in the midst of the Black Lives Matter movement, and just all the resources that were available for me to learn from. And I think the same can be applied to learning about the environment and learning about opportunities to engage, really bolstering up one's social media and making sure that is accessible. These are the things that we offer, laying that out very clearly, but also social media, I would say, networking. So there, of course, are so many groups of, I would say, many oriented towards the climate justice movement, but of course, incorporated in the climate justice movement is equity and making sure that one knows about the inequities that exist because of environmental exploitation, and engaging BIPOC individuals in this work. So in networking, there are so many other organizations and initiatives across the state that oftentimes, more than not, they post each other's resources and things of that sort to make sure that there is collective work, and that all individuals in each of these different networks are aware of the opportunities that all of these organizations have to offer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mara. We have a couple questions from Chrissy, who also works for the Blue Hill Heritage Trust, so I will read those to you. She says, thank you for sharing your experience with us. Growing up in Down East Maine and now working at a land trust in my hometown community, which is becoming more diverse each day, we discussed issues of access and whether everyone in our community feel like the work we are doing is for them. I would be curious, what are your thoughts on things like signs indicating that specific groups, BIPOC, LGBTQ, etc., are welcome on the land rather than just a general welcome message? Does this feel like a superficial effort, or is it really meaningful? And does it help to make people truly feel welcome and safe? And then she says, I feel like feeling welcome and safe is an important step in helping BIPOC and all groups feeling connected with our environment and nature. Thank you for your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Chrissy. I would say, and of course this is my opinion, that I don't know if I would, I don't know if it would be further welcoming for me, at least, to have additional signing for specific groups. I can't really describe how that makes me feel, but I would say it makes me feel, I guess, some type of way. So I would not be inclined to do so, but I think really the inclusion comes into the resources that are available for individuals engaging with trails and other resources that land trusts and other organizations have to offer. So, as mentioned earlier, translations, guides who speak different languages, and other resources like that would really show what any kind of sign would express.
Thank you so much, Amara, for that clarity. That's been something we've kind of been talking about and trying to figure out which way to go with it. So I think you provided a lot of clarity for us there. Thank you. So Chrissy's other question was, and I guess this is maybe between you and I and Jake later, but maybe the rest of the audience would be interested too. Can you suggest or share with us, with Landra and Jake afterwards, any articles on environmental racism?
Yes, I have too many, to be quite honest. Grist, amazing. I also enjoy the Alliance for Climate Education, so ACE. They have some amazing articles as well, more oriented towards climate justice and climate education. But I would check out both Grist and ACE for articles that are just truly amazing.
Thank you so much.
That'll be good to share. If maybe we can do that in the follow-up email, Lander.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
People are great.
Absolutely.
So we had a couple more questions streaming in. In the current COVID environment, is it feasible to use online citizen science, e.g. Budapest, Feeder Watch, and to engage and attract young people? Or should we wait to introduce them to in-person citizen science when we can?
That is an excellent question. Let me see. I have not actually heard of these online citizen science tools before, actually. But even though I have, graduated Bangor High School, I passed the baton of, president and lead of the SMART team to my sister, actually. And so in me being here this semester, I'm able to still keep tabs on the team and kind of aid her in these very difficult times of, organizing and things like that. And it has been difficult to be able to sample and go out into the field with, being safe, being precautious. It seems as though the team this year is some younger students. So with being younger, they're not able to drive. So it would really be in having one form, one transportation. But obviously with COVID, that cannot happen. I would say it's difficult to say the very least. It's very difficult. But I think that there have been things that my sister has thought of that we've, kind of collaborated on that have really been working. So I think that for World Water Day, which it totally slips my mind when that is, but one thing that my sister is doing is that they're actually doing some kind of Zoom online event that have some interactive components to them of engaging with the outdoors, of one, just, going to their stream if it's local and things like that, sampling. I know that another thing that's being incorporated are like some test kits themselves, which at the same time that it would be so nice to actually be a group, to be together and to sample and to be out in the field, to do that on one's own and then to come back and report one's findings. I think that it still has that very collaborative group feel to it without with still being safe and being cognizant of the world that we live. So I would say that there are a plethora of ways to continue to still do these kind of citizen science efforts, but of course one is just like very much so looking forward to the future for when one can reconvene with their groups and be able to collaborate in the way that one did before.
And World Water Day is March 22nd of this year.
Cool fact.
Just thought I'd throw it out there. Amara, I don't know if I think you can see the chat box, but I just want you to know that there's a lot of praise in there for you and there's a lot of thanks. And I know I can speak for Lander when I say thank you for joining us this afternoon. Let's see. I'm just scanning through. Caroline was just kind of pigging back on what she said before about the feeder watch, and it's actually it's it asks you to record birds that are visiting your feeders in your own yard or your facility. And I know that IHG had done that in the past because we had a feeder out, and we need to be better about keeping it filled, but we used to do that too. So that's thank you, Caroline. That's a really great way to get involved and do something remotely. And that is a really easy way to, stay COVID safe for the time being. And I think we have like just 8 minutes left. Lander, has anybody else raised their hand?
Somebody had their hand up for a minute, but then it disappeared. So it might have been a mistake, but yeah, just more thanks coming in the chat box. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
Yeah, it was wonderful, Amara. Thank you. I don't know, is there anything else you wanted to say? I mean, we have a couple minutes left. There's no need to rush. If there's anything else that you wanted to throw out there, or topics that you wanted to touch on.
Let me see. First, of course, just want to express my gratitude for Lander and Jake for having me for this speaker series, as well as to the audience for joining us this evening and hearing what I had to say, and really just talking about my passion, which I just so love. I would say that a note for maybe, I don't know if there's like any educators or administrators, just anyone who interacts with youth. I think it's really important that it really starts with, a mentor or a role model or something, or someone like that who inspires youth to actually get out and engage with the outdoors. For me, it was most definitely my teachers who inspired me. I had an idea for a club, and I brought it to one of my teachers, and they just totally let me run with it, gave me all the support that I needed, collaborated with me on so many different things. So I think it's really, really important in order to build up, environmental activists. They need support. I think that intergenerational learning is my favorite type of learning, at least. I think it is, in my opinion, of course, the best kind of learning, to be able to bounce ideas off of different individuals who have different, lived experiences than one's self is so, so amazing and transformative. So I think that if there's, anyone in the audience who interacts with youth, I think it really starts with you to make sure that youth know that the environment, they have a right to be able to connect with it.
Thank you, Amara. That was a lot of wisdom that you shared with us in our closing moments. Thank you so much again. I've been taking many notes, as I'm sure others have as well. We really appreciate all of the time that you spent with us this evening and in preparing for this presentation. And I think I can say we all wish you the best of luck in your semester, and can't wait to hear more about what you end up doing.
Definitely. And the recording will be posted on the Blue Hill Heritage Trust website and the IHG website as well. And there'll be shareable links and everything. So people who, if you have a friend who wasn't able to tune in, or someone you want to share this with, it'll be very accessible once it's uploaded. So thank you, Amara.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and look out for a follow-up email from me with the recording and some extra resources. And I hope you all have a wonderful night.
Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amara.